So in about 1977, we separated, 7 years after we were married. 1978, we were divorced. So in 1978, I found myself about 30 years old with 2 kids, one boy 3 and one boy was an infant, and living on my own, doing a job as a police officer, but loving my job, but the rest of my life was really kind of a mess. So I began living a life that was all for myself, for my own self-pleasure, for my own interests, and not really being in and out of relationships and not really wanting to be connected to anybody permanently. And so as a result of that, through those relationships in the late 70s, a woman that I was involved with became pregnant. And I knew that I already had 2 children. I was paying child support for each one of those. I was paying spousal support. I wasn't making a whole lot of money as a police officer. And I didn't want another kid. And I much less did not want to get married as well. So I convinced that young lady, that woman who I had gotten pregnant, compelled her essentially to get an abortion. That relationship went away, more relationships followed, and in the early 80s, same thing occurred again with a different woman. Didn't want to get married, I didn't want to have another child. Again, I was still paying child support, and I was looking at it from a very selfish perspective. I have what I want to have, and I don't want to have any more, and I don't want to be tied down to anybody else. I want to just live my life as I want to live. So consequently, I convinced that woman, compelled her to have an abortion. Both those abortions, this is how uncaring and unsensitive and uninvolved I was. I can't even tell you the exact year or the month or the day that those abortions occurred. It was that insignificant to me. It mattered that little. All I cared about was that they got the abortions. My concept of the whole idea of abortion was that it was not my issue. My problem was just to pay for it and make it happen. But my issue was not to be involved with it. Then a few years later, 1984, and I can give you the exact date and pretty close to the exact time, I was involved in a pretty significant police issue that did make me get involved. Through that whole incident afterwards and the healing from it and the counseling, I never, ever once made the connection or even realized the fact that that whole situation could possibly relate to that abortion experience. And not only for myself, but for the 2 women involved. Never even dawned on me, never crossed my mind. So in an effort to find some healing for the wounds that I had inside over those 2 abortions, I started doing some internet searching and found that there's some programs out there that seemed like they would be beneficial. And then not long after that, early 2017, I went to SaveOne and went through that program as well. What I saw in the way of pain and suffering and damage that women had endured as a result of having to go through an abortion process, some of them multiples. And so it began to dawn on me that it wasn't just about me and my healing, but I'd done a tremendous amount of damage that I needed to make some reparations for and that I needed to do something about. So basically there were 3 vows, I guess you could say, that I made to myself. And the first one was I was going to do everything in my power to prevent abortion in my family line from ever occurring again. First thing I did is I went to my 2 sons and their wives, and I explained to them what I had done all those years ago. And I explained to my sons that it doesn't matter what happens. If there's an unintended pregnancy between you and your wife, and because you've already got the kids that you want to have, you're contemplating an abortion, please don't do that. I will give you whatever financial assistance is needed to avoid that happening, because I don't want to see you and your wives go through this kind of pain and suffering. It's not worth it. And then the other thing I asked each of them was, I'd like to explain this to your kids, to my grandkids, because I want them to understand that same principle. Particularly to the girls. If you girls find yourself at some point in time in your life with an unintended pregnancy that you're contemplating ending through an abortion, come to Grandpa. Grandpa is not going to judge. Grandpa is not going to scold. Grandpa is not going to think anything less of you. He's going to love you completely and 100%. And he's going to support you. And we'll figure out what to do from there. But you do not need the pain and agony that comes with abortion. You just don't understand it. And I've seen it and felt it and been through it and seen other women that have experienced it, and it's just not pleasant. Second vow is, I realized again the damage I'd done to those 2 women whose abortions I had caused and compelled. I needed to apologize to them. So through mutual acquaintances and contacts and so forth, I was able to track them down, one by email only. That's the only way she wanted to communicate, and the other by a phone call. And what I said was, I sincerely apologize. If I could take it back, I would. It wasn't your fault. It was all my responsibility. I accept that, and I apologize deeply as I can express in words. I didn't ask for forgiveness because it's not mine to ask, it's theirs to give. And it was given in both cases without me even asking. So there was some closure there for them. And the really, really sad part about that is that neither of them have ever had another child. So I deprived them of their one and only possibility of having children. The other thing I realized is the damage I'd done to my first wife. And so to try and repair that, I met with her face to face. I knew where she was living, and we were still in contact superficially over some things with the boys, with our two sons. And I apologized to her for my infidelity and causing the divorce and all the problems that I created as a result of that. Then the last vow is I'm going to help. I'm going to help in whatever way I can, but being there to help other people recover from their abortion experiences when they've had negative experiences as a result of that. And the other portion of that is to help by speaking. So to that vein, I've spoke at several churches about this. I've spoke at the Oregon Right to Life Conference. I'm putting myself out there just so I can serve not only as a spokesperson for not having abortions, but also help others that may be contemplating that. And so to that end, to close, what I'd like to do is just speak to anybody out there that's listening, to any women that may have had an abortion. If you're harboring any sort of pain, agony, guilt, shame, negative kinds of consequences and feelings, or negative things that are happening in your life as a result of those abortions, please, please, please do not be hesitant to seek some kind of counseling and healing. SaveOne's a wonderful program. They're very helpful and they're very healing. You just have to take that step and get involved with the program. To any women out there that might be considering abortion, I would strongly urge you to look into what the ramifications are and talk to some people that have had abortions before you do it. There's no need to have some procedure done this very instant. That child grows for 9 months inside of you, and it is a child, it is a human being. It isn't a blob of tissue. It's a life from the moment that the egg is fertilized with the seed, with the sperm. It's a human being, and it will continue to be until the day that it naturally dies. So seek some honest input and get some advice and reconsider your choice. Lastly, to the men, I want to speak to your responsibility. We have responsibilities in this world that a lot of times, particularly in this day and age, are being thrown to the curb as if they're not any big deal at all. Causing a woman to be pregnant is your responsibility, and it's your responsibility to care for that child as much as it is that mother's. The mother's going to nurture it and bring it to life, but you're responsible for that life getting started. Be a man, be a stand-up man. Don't be a coward like I was and was afraid to accept that responsibility, that additional responsibility, because I was too selfish. Stand up for life, stand up for what's right, and do the right thing. My name is John, and I'm a truth teller.